The Portrayal of Witches, a short, and incomplete, history. Part 1. The Greek view of witches. One thing that stands out regarding the Greek view of witches is the fact that witches in Greek mythology were all portrayed as both young and beautiful. It was the seers, or oracles, that were depicted as old crones. Greek mythology features many powerful female figures associated with magic and witchcraft, known as sorceresses or pharmakists. The most prominent witches, or sorceresses, in Greek mythology are Hecate, the magical enchantress, Circe, the sorceress, and her niece Medea, who possessed deep knowledge of herbs, poisons, and spiritual magic. The term, witch, in ancient Greece referred to women with magical knowledge and was frequently associated with foreign lands with potentially negative connotations, even though Hecate was the divine mentor and patroness of these magical arts. Item: the key figures in Greek mythology. Hecate. No witchcraft practicing being, in Greek mythology, was ever more venerated than the goddess of witchcraft herself, Hecate. First mentioned in the 7th century BC in Hesiod's Theogony, Hecate was said to be the daughter of the nymph Asteria with the titan Perses. She was the chief goddess of magic and spells, as well as the priestess of ghosts, necromancy, the moon, and the night. She would often appear as a seductive maiden, or a mysterious woman of childbearing age. Similarly, the image of a torch-carrying woman, accompanied by black dogs, is also a form associated with Hecate. This stems from one of the goddess' earliest appearances in Greek mythology, in the Gigantomachy, where she was believed to have slain the giant Clitius with the use of her burning torch. Circe. A witch, a sorceress, an herbalist, a temptress. Circe was all of that. She was also described as the most beautiful of all mortal women, this despite her having the blood of an actual god flowing in her. Most sources write that Circe was the daughter of the sun god Helios, with either the ocean nymph Persei or the goddess of witchcraft Hecate. Nevertheless, she was best known for her dualistic role in Odysseus' journey as told by the Odyssey, where she demonstrated her mastery in magical arts. She lured people in, concocted potions, cast spells, and ultimately turned some of her victims into pigs. It has been speculated that the animal she turned people into actually reflected their inner selves. Anyway, at the same time, it was in the Odyssey that she became one of Odysseus' greatest benefactors, providing him and his men the crucial information about how they could safely navigate their return to Ithaca. Medea. As a daughter of Aeetes, Medea was also a granddaughter of the Greek sun god Helios, as well as a niece of Perses, and the sorceresses Pasiphae and Circe. Medea was believed to be a witch with the gift of seeing into the future. She first appears when she, using her knowledge and magical prowess, aided Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, in his mission to obtain the magical golden fleece. When victory was secured, the two proceeded to marry. But the turning point for Medea eventually arose when Jason abandoned her, so that he could wed King Creon's daughter, Glauce, who Medea ultimately kills by lighting her on fire, along with the king and the entire castle. As if all of that was not enough, Medea then seals the deal by taking hold of her children with Jason and stabbing them multiple times, leading to their tragic deaths. This solidified her legacy in Greek mythology as one of the most tragic and ruthless witches. Pasiphae. The sister of Circe, and the daughter of Helios and Persei, Pasiphae undoubtedly came from a line of names that are nothing short of recognized. Unfortunately for her, in Greek mythology, she became best known, neither for her bloodline nor her skills in sorcery, but for a curse placed upon her by the sea god Poseidon. As the law goes, every year, the kingdom of Crete was required to sacrifice the fairest bull born in its herd to Poseidon. But when the day came, Minos refused to surrender a rarely handsome bull, called the Cretan bull. It was Pasiphae, Minos' wife, who fell victim to the god's wretched punishment. She was doomed to lust after the Cretan bull. And not just that. To mate with it, and to ultimately carry its son, the Minotaur. And now for something completely different. Lamia. Lamia may be a witch, But she was also a monster with a voracious appetite for devouring children. Having been notorious for those two things, who would have guessed that she was also once a beautiful and relatively innocent queen? Yet things quickly, and devastatingly, took a turn for the worse for Lamia, when she caught the wrath of the goddess Hera. According to the ancient lore, after supposedly having an affair with Zeus, Hera turned Lamia into a serpentine chimera, with the head and breasts of a hauntingly attractive woman, and the bottom half of a giant snake. The curse came with a few abilities though, as Lamia was said to have second sight, shape-shifting abilities, and a flair for witchcraft. Item: the social context of witches in Greek mythos. The witches in Greek mythology often represented a challenge to the patriarchal structures of ancient Greece, embodying both a fascination with, and anxiety about, powerful, female, figures. While being depicted as very beautiful, many Greek mythos witches, such as Medea, were also depicted as foreigners, with their non-Greek origins often contributing to their suspicion and notoriety. Part 2. The Roman view of witches. In contrast, witches in ancient Rome were more contemporary, dangerous, far more powerful, and could influence the real world. With this real-world influence, Roman witches could evoke a greater fear factor. They had the power that Greek witches had, and more, as they had the power of necromancy, and could even compel the gods. It was the Romans who depicted witches as old crones or exceptionally ugly. Meanwhile, Roman seers, or oracles, were depicted as young and beautiful. The classical literary portraits of Roman witches and witchcraft demonstrate an emblematic relationship between gender and magic. Again, Roman witches were ugly, old, frightening, and immensely powerful, in total contrast to Greek witches, who were depicted as beautiful, youthful, seductresses. They were hideous women performing strange and perverse nocturnal acts, summoning the power of dark forces, dwelling between the earth and the underworld, between life and death. This portrayal of witches has not changed much in 2,500 years, and we have no trouble recognizing the witches of Roman literature. It may be added here that in 1812, the Brothers Grimm did little to dissuade this Roman depiction of witches in their fairy tale compilation for children. Viewer discretion is advised. Horace wrote two poems about two witches, one slightly humorous and the other quite sinister. Canadia and Sagana. Canadia and Sagana appear dressed in black, have pale skin, long nails, and wild hair. They shriek and cackle. They come to a graveyard at night when there is a full moon and pick herbs, tear apart a lamb, and pour blood on graves to conjure up spirits. They bury a wolf's beard and the fang of a spotted snake and burn a wax doll. But everything turns slightly farcical when the Priapus statue, who is narrating the poem, farts. The startled witches run away, one losing her false teeth and the other her wig. Later, the two witches are described as uglier still. Canadia has locks entwined with twisting vipers, and Sagana's hair stands on end like the bristles of a charging boar. They are about to kill a boy in order to make a love potion. Canadia wants to ensnare Varus, a Roman general and politician, and needs a powerful potion, using the liver and marrow of a boy. As well as these things, the witches need many other bizarre items for their potion: barren wild fig wood that sprouts from gravestone cracks, cypress from a dead man's door, screech owl's eggs, besmeared with the gore of a poisoned toad, herbs produced in Iolcos and Hiberia, abundant in the weeds of Bane, and bones, snatched from the jaws of starving dogs. In the Pharsalia, Lucan created Ericto to be the most hideous of all witches. She frightens the very gods themselves. Ericto shuns other witches for being too tame. Not only does she desecrate dead bodies, she enjoys creating her own. Lucan lists her crimes against humanity. She steals the bloom off the faces of children, she cuts the hair of dead adolescents, she snatches babies from their mothers' wombs, and she bends over a dead body to kiss it, opening the mouth with her teeth, biting the tongue, then sending a hissed message of terror down the throat to the shades of Styx. Part 3. The modern depiction of witches. That brings us to the traditional Halloween witch, who was never really a witch. She was actually a brew master. Up until the 1500s, women were responsible for brewing beer, for purposes of preserving grain. Similar to canning, brewing beer preserved the grain for latter consumption in the winter. No, one could not make bread from it. Evidence of this brewing dates back to the 5th millennium BC in what is today Iran. The activity has even been referenced in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest works of literature known to man. According to records, women were responsible for brewing beer all over Mesopotamia, up until the rise of the Roman Empire, wherein brewing by males began to increase in numbers in Egypt. In Northern Europe, however, women continued to hold the monopoly on the production of homebrew. However, as feudalism transformed much of society during the Dark Ages, these numbers declined drastically. It was during the Dark Ages that these brewsters adopted some unconventional advertising methods. 1. They would adorn tall pointed hats. 2. They would place broomsticks at the doorways of their alehouses so customers would know that a brew was ready. 3. Frothing cauldrons and 6-point stars accompanied their advertisements to indicate the quality of the brew. And 4. Cats were increasingly kept as pets to protect the ingredients from vermin. Mice and rats love grain, cats are partial to mice and rats. In the latter half of the 1500s, as the Dark Ages came to an end, and the age of exploration began, brewsters began to lose their relevance. During that period over 200,000 women were accused of being witches and were prosecuted for it. Many of these were accused falsely by men who wanted to hurt the brewsters' businesses. Add to that, men began to depict brewsters negatively in art, literature, and mainstream culture. This included the depiction of a clear similarity between brewsters and typical witches. Proliferation of these depictions were used to circulate anti-witch and anti-brewster propaganda. Even when the process of brewing was introduced to America, women were mostly in charge of the brewing. Over time, however, when money got involved, so did the men. All things considered, the Greek depiction seems to be the more logical. Let's face it, you would never see a used car salesman dressed like Herb Tarlek. Nor would con men make themselves look shady or obvious, unlike their Hollywood depictions. So why would a woman who supposedly wants to lure people into her clutches look hideous or repulsive? The Brothers Grimm utilized a candy house in the deep forest in order to attract Hansel and Gretel, but considering the low traffic area wherein it was placed, victims would have been far and few between. One could speculate that the proliferation of hags and hideous-looking witches was generated by those real witches who want to go about their witchery unmolested by peasants with pitchforks plus bonfires that include posts with rope. Perhaps it is time to engage in a little eye candy when depicting witches for Halloween. There was general acceptance for Samantha Stevens and her mother Endora back in the day. Though it may not make them any nicer, prettier witches are a lot easier to look at.